Canada pumps nearly 5 million barrels of oil a day, the fourth largest output on Earth. Yet it imports hundreds of thousands of barrels from Saudi Arabia and Nigeria at up to 3 times the price of its own crude, while 80% of Canadian oil flows south to American refineries at a steep discount. This is the strangest oil trade on Earth, playing out inside one country. And it all starts with a distance problem no one has managed to solve. Alberta is the beating heart of Canada's oil machine, pumping out 4.3 million barrels per day, more than 80% of the nation's output. But this is not a story of easy riches. The province sits on a vast, windswept plateau, home to just 5 million people scattered across a landmass nearly the size of Texas and California combined. With so few locals to use all that crude, almost every barrel must travel a daunting distance to reach the real demand. The numbers are staggering. From the oil sands near Fort McMurray to the refineries and fuel stations of Toronto or Montreal, the journey stretches over 2,000 miles as the crow flies. Factor in the actual pipeline, rail, or highway routes, which snake around lakes, mountains, and through the Canadian Shield, and the haul balloons to nearly 2,500 miles. That distance is farther than the drive from Edmonton to Miami, and it is the single biggest reason why Canada's oil trade defies logic. Each mile tacks on extra cost, handling fees, fuel, insurance, and maintenance. For every barrel, every day, the sheer size of the country acts like a toll booth, eating away at the price advantage Alberta should enjoy. The further east the oil needs to go, the more expensive it gets, eroding any savings from domestic supply. This is not just an inconvenience, it is a structural barrier. The infrastructure needed to move such volumes, pipelines, terminals, storage tanks, must cross some of the toughest terrain on the continent, from permafrost to the Canadian Shield to dense forest. The result is a geographic trap. Alberta can produce world-class volumes, but geography alone makes it hard to deliver that oil to the Canadians who need it most. Instead, the easiest and cheapest path leads south, across the border, into the waiting arms of American buyers. Meanwhile, Eastern Canada turns to tankers from Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, and the US, paying a premium for oil that has traveled halfway around the world. In a country this vast, distance is not just a number on a map. It is the first and maybe the most stubborn reason why a global oil superpower is forced to act like a customer in its own house. Pipelines are the arteries of Canada's oil economy, but even the largest cannot keep up with Alberta's relentless output. The Enbridge Mainline, stretching nearly 2,500 miles from Edmonton through the Midwest to Ontario, moves about 2 million barrels per day at full capacity. Yet this system was never built to handle today's volumes, or to send oil east across the Canadian Shield. Instead, it is jammed with crude heading south, funneled through a web of U.S. pump stations, border crossings, and regulatory choke points. Any disruption in the U.S., a new regulation, or a single pump failure can leave Canadian producers stranded, unable to reach eastern refineries at all. For decades, industry and politicians have floated the idea of a direct pipeline from Alberta to the Atlantic. But the cost is staggering. Engineering estimates put the price tag at 25 billion Canadian dollars, and that is before factoring in the terrain. The route would cross permafrost, ancient rock, and dozens of rivers. It would also run through more than 30 indigenous territories, each requiring consultation and often compensation. Environmental risk looms large. Heavy crude is harder to detect and clean up in the event of a spill, making liability insurance and public opposition even fiercer. Every kilometer adds to the bill, pushing the project further out of reach. When pipelines run out of room, rail becomes the fallback. But rail is no bargain. Moving a barrel of oil by train can cost up to 3 times more than by pipe, especially over the long haul to the east. That cost gets passed along, inflating the price of Canadian crude and making it less attractive to buyers. Worse, rail carries its own dangers. On July 18, 2013, a train loaded with crude derailed in Lac Mégantic, Quebec. The explosion killed 47 people and destroyed the town's center. The disaster was traced to a mix of human error, lax oversight, and aging equipment. In the aftermath, Canada imposed strict new safety rules, driving rail costs even higher and cementing public resistance to oil by rail. The options are clear, but none are cheap or easy. Pipelines are hemmed in by geography, politics, and cost. Rail is expensive, risky, and for many communities, simply unacceptable. The result is a system where oil cannot move efficiently to the Canadians who need it, and where every alternative comes with a heavy price, measured in dollars, and sometimes in lives. Eastern Canada's refineries were built to run on light, sweet crude, oil that flows easily, contains little sulfur, and comes mainly from overseas. Alberta's oil, by contrast, is heavy and thick, with high sulfur and metal content. Processing it isn't just a matter of turning a valve, it demands an arsenal of specialized equipment, coking units, hydrodesulfurization reactors, and advanced residue upgraders. Retrofitting a single refinery for this kind of feedstock costs between 2 and 5 billion Canadian dollars, with a payback period stretching 15 to 25 years. For most operators, the math simply does not work. The capital outlay is too high, and the reward, capturing a price spread of 15 to 20 US dollars a barrel, takes a generation to recoup, even under optimistic market conditions. This technical mismatch locks in a strange trade pattern. While Alberta's oil heads south to the US, tankers from Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, and the Gulf Coast dock at ports in Quebec and New Brunswick. The irony is sharp. Canada exports roughly 80% of its crude, yet still imports hundreds of thousands of barrels a day at a premium. The price of this arrangement is steep. Western Canadian Select, Alberta's benchmark blend, trades at a discount of 15 to 20 US dollars per barrel against West Texas Intermediate. The reasons are layered: quality penalties for heavy crude, higher transport costs, and most of all, the lack of diverse buyers. With the US as the dominant customer, American refiners hold the upper hand in negotiations, driving down the price they pay for Canadian oil. The fiscal drain is enormous. Alberta's government has watched billions in potential royalties slip away. In 2018 alone, the province lost an estimated 19 billion Canadian dollars in revenue due to the Western Canadian Select discount. Over a decade, cumulative losses have reached into the tens of billions. The result is a system where Canada, one of the world's largest oil producers, remains a price taker, paying more for imported oil while selling its own at a bargain, and leaving the country's full economic potential untapped. May 2024 brought a seismic change to Canada's oil story. After years of delays, legal battles, and ballooning costs, the Trans Mountain expansion finally came online. The price tag hit 34 billion Canadian dollars, more than 6 times the original estimate, but the payoff was immediate. For the first time, nearly 900,000 barrels of Alberta crude could flow west each day, straight to Pacific tidewater. In its first 12 months, exports outside the US soared, rising sixfold. Almost half the oil leaving the terminal set out for Asia, with tankers bound for China, Singapore, South Korea, and India. These buyers offered a premium of up to $12 a barrel over what US refiners would pay, shrinking the Western Canadian Select discount and sending a surge of fresh revenue back to Alberta. The Trans Mountain expansion did not just boost volumes, it broke the single buyer stranglehold that had defined Canada's oil trade for decades. For the first time, Canadian producers could sell directly into global markets, bypassing the choke points and price squeezes of the US Midwest. But the Pacific window is still narrow. Even at full throttle, the Trans Mountain expansion cannot carry all of Alberta's surplus. The next ambition is even bigger, a standalone pipeline from Alberta to Prince Rupert. Feasibility studies target a capacity of 1 million barrels per day, enough to move nearly all of Alberta's uncommitted heavy crude directly to the Pacific. Prince Rupert's deep water port can handle very large crude carriers, the world's largest oil tankers, unlocking direct shipment to Asia and trimming transport costs even further. The engineering challenges are steep. The planned corridor would cross mountains, rivers, and indigenous territories with a projected capital bill of up to 35 billion Canadian dollars. But the logic is clear. A second Pacific outlet would transform Canada from a captive supplier into a true global player. The Trans Mountain expansion proved that diversification is possible. The Prince Rupert Corridor could make it permanent, turning Canada's oil paradox on its head.
Canada's oil paradox isn't just a quirk of geography. It's a billion-dollar test of national priorities. As new export corridors inch closer, the stakes rise. Every pipeline delay costs millions, and every import underlines lost potential. The world's fifth largest reserve remains hemmed in. Who truly benefits from that constraint?